How's everybody doing? Wow, you guys are awesome. This has been a good day, right? Did you learn anything? Just a little couple somethings. I just think we have a fabulous group of people that come in and talk. And by the way, I'm Connie. Let me start out by introducing myself. I am not an expert. Well, I like to think I'm an expert in most things. My master's degree is in science, not in social work. So, but I do think that when I first heard people that weren't living with someone with Parkinson's give this talk, that they really didn't get it. Okay? And so that's what really motivated me to try to come and talk to you. And I learn as much sometimes from my talks as I do from my own experiences. And so a lot of the information that I'll share with you today really comes from what I hear from you out there, what your challenges are. Because you've heard it all day long. Everybody's journey with Parkinson's is so different. And it's part of what makes it so challenging, right? But there are a lot of similarities, and the same is true of being a caregiver. We have a lot of commonality and a lot of things we can share with each other. I grew up in a home where my mother had multiple sclerosis. And I was about 5 when she was diagnosed. My oldest brother was 6, and she had 4 children. And it was, I think for her, it must have been an incredible diagnosis to have to live with, especially back in the 60s. When there was very little information out there, and thank God there was no internet to terrify you, right? But really, there was very little information, and people in the 60s, I'm from Wisconsin, didn't talk about their diseases and their problems. She didn't have opportunities to go to events like this, and so she was pretty much doing it on her own. And as I told a friend of mine recently, when I was a teenager, she was reading a book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And I said, in my teenage, egocentric way, Mom, why are you reading that book? Because she really didn't share with us what her struggles were. And so in my family, I really learned a bit about Stoicism, but also about grace. And my mother lived with a lot of grace and a lot of humor. And I've taken that with me, and I think that Davis had also learned and had learned quite well what my mother could do in the world and how well she lived with grace in spite of what is really not a nice disease. So sometimes I rant a little bit about caregiving because I think that we all care. That's at the bottom of the page here, but I really want you to think about that in terms of being called a caregiver, I hope and I pray that your person with Parkinson's cares about you too. It's not a one-way street, and I think that's really important. This is a long journey, and the caring has to be mutual. And while I think it's fair to ask who cares for me, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that today. It's also fair to realize that the tide has turned a little bit probably in your household, and that you will yourself as a caregiver also have health challenges, as I have. We all will, right? So you better make sure that you know who can care for you if it's not your person with Parkinson's. You need to start building that network now, because you can't do this alone. And one thing I've noticed in this community, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to be a very friendly, giving community. And that's so important. But some of us in the caregiving realm tend to learn how to care and give that care, but we don't know how to take. So as I say, it's not called caretaking, but we also need to learn how to take care of ourselves and take care from other people, allow other people to help us. We're going to talk a lot about that today, I think. Again, one caregiver told me that the toughest job he had ever done was caregiving for his brother, and he had been a Navy SEAL. And that really said a lot to me. He came up to me after one of my talks, and I want you to know that. I so appreciate this job and this work that you're doing. And I think in a game like Parkinson's, where the complications are so many, and where you get the flat affect on your face, so you can't even tell sometime when the person with Parkinson's is what they're feeling or thinking, and you feel kind of overwhelmed by that, right? Because you're not getting the normal feedback, that it can be very frustrating, right? Very frustrating and confusing, because you can be angry with Parkinson's disease, but it's hard to be angry with your person with Parkinson's. And if you want them to start tremoring, you can get angry with them, right? Right? So a lot of times when I have a room full of people that are caregiving and kind of got, roped into this disease, which even the person with Parkinson's did too, they fell into this. I like to just sort of get it out front that, we've done a lot of saying things out loud today, and one of them I'd like you to say out loud is, I hate Parkinson's disease. Let's say that together. I hate Parkinson's disease. It's very cathartic. And the reason that I want you to do that and even share that with your person with Parkinson's is because it's okay not to like Parkinson's. And I think that what you get from what he's saying too is, I don't have to be best friends with Parkinson's, but I need to learn how to deal with it, right? And so do we as caregivers. And we need to learn a lot of grace in the process, because it just doesn't play nice, right? It doesn't do what we want when we want it. So I like to say that most of us, again, need to learn how to ask for help. We might not know how to accept help, and we certainly maybe have not encouraged our person with Parkinson's to learn how to accept help. And I think that is an art form, right? So how do you do that? If you don't teach your person with Parkinson's to accept help early in the game, how will they accept it later when things get tougher? So the key is introducing people into your life that you can ask help from, and that will give help, and that your person with Parkinson's will accept help from. So a couple weeks ago, I was down in Dallas at the Parkinson's Voice Project, and they're here today, great people, great organization, working with speech specifically for people with Parkinson's. And I was going to be gone overnight, and I knew that first thing the following morning, my neighbor would be dropping muffins off at our door, because that's just what she does. I don't even have to ask her most times. I have friends that I know will just step in, and do these little things. And she also knows that Davis doesn't always want to be bothered. So sometimes she just text him and then leave them at the door, And it's amazing what people will do if you just ask, So the number one task you have is to ask. Don't just give all the time. Learn how to ask. And it's little things sometimes. Don't wait till you feel like this, right? Just, because it's easy to do that. And it's easy to get pent up and have anger and not be able to, vent that, because you haven't actually looked after you. Numero uno, by the way, is you. And because you haven't done that, you might be serving the person with Parkinson's better than you're serving yourself. I'll like to put this in, Erin, you're not the only one with funny slides. Harnessing your caregiving superpower. For me, it's getting out on the bike, right? And while I don't have a bat bike, sometimes I feel like it because I feel like I'm just sneaking off and getting away, right? And it's, I don't always want to ride with Davis either. I want to sometime be on my own, and it's fair, right? So we have to allow ourselves the time that we need. Parkinson's disease is complicated. We all heard that all day long. And this cartoon here, this Parkinson's symptoms cartoon, is done by a gentleman with Parkinson's called Peter Dunlap Scholl. And he's written a book called My Degeneration. And it's because he was he's from Anchorage, And I've never met him. We've communicated a lot, and I'm going to see him in about a month. I'm going to meet him in Anchorage because my daughter's cross-country ski racing up there. And, but he's been sharing his images with me, and I love his book. I can't recommend it enough because it really helps detail the journey of Parkinson's. And particularly if you're trying to explain it to a friend or a family member, some of his, and just even the way that he interacts with the doctor in his cartoons that he draws is just so spot on. And you really only get it if you're living with someone with Parkinson's or have Parkinson's. It's really beneficial. But it's probably a little bit hard to see that slide, but it shows all these complications, that aren't just what your neighbors think Parkinson's disease is, right? And what we know to be true. So neuroscience is such a small part of it, really. It's so many other things when you break it down socially because you can't count on it. It doesn't play by your schedule. It's 24/7. My husband has REM sleep behavior disorder, so I know it's 24/7, and that probably many of your people with Parkinson's have that, whether you know it or not. I know it because I've been bit in the middle of the night because I was a protagonist in one of the dreams. And, it can be a dangerous situation. It took us years to get separate beds, for me to say, this might be better if we don't sleep in the same bed. And, it's funny because the minute we did that, he slept better and I slept better because we didn't have to worry as much. I'd be like, oh, what's coming my way? And it was because he was acting out his dreams. This is a very common part of Parkinson's, but it's not like one of the first things a doctor tells you when you go to get a diagnosis, right? And anyway, so that's, all these things that we learn as we go along, and also why it's so important for you to make friends with other people with Parkinson's that might understand some of these symptoms and help you to solve the problem. My daughter did a podcast for our foundation on this topic of REM sleep behavior disorder, and it was so amazing because there's so many people that then called and said, oh, that's what that was. And, and it's just like we are, as a population, underserved because there's so much we need to know. But when you get to go to see the doctor, it's 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, right? Every 6 months or something. So it's very hard to get the answers that you need. And that's why I must really commend you all for being here as well. Getting information off the internet is like taking a drink from a fire hydrant. I cannot stress enough that you need to be very careful about the magical cures and a lot of the things that you do read on the internet, which is why it's so important to go to sources that make sense for you, where you can really learn important information from verified sources, okay, like this. Like the foundation, like your local chapter here, because it's so important for you to know, that the information that you do have is correct and that it's actually applicable. And I think that that's part of what's so hard. And I put these two infographics up here because, again, our daughter who majored in neuroscience in college, just graduated a year and a half ago, produced some information for our website that I think was so correctly informed because not only did she grow up with the disease and then study the disease, but she also got to look at parts of the disease that impacted her life. The REM sleep behavior, because I'd talked to her about it. She was kind of confused why Mom and Dad all of a sudden had 2 beds. You guys not getting along? What's happening? But also because facial masking is so important. And when she started to study facial masking and do some interviewing on this topic, it's amazing how much we lose, how much the person with Parkinson's actually loses by not being able to emote from their face. We as caregivers lose a lot because we don't get the feedback that we're used to counting on. I find it to be absolutely one of the most difficult parts of the disease because I don't know, what is he thinking? You know, what's behind that mask? And so Davis talked today, too, about practicing, like practice your smile, practice, you know, the singing and the voice especially, because when they lose that ability to communicate, it makes it so much harder for everybody around them. And you, the caregiver, understand that to a certain extent. Let me tell you, it's very hard on teenagers when the kid's trying to push the parent's button and the parent is... It's actually a good tactic. But it's also really challenging, too, because then the teenager might pull away more. So you have to explain this to your kids, too, or to friends. But we have a speaker that comes to our events now and then who I just adore because he talks about social capital. And this is something that I hadn't ever really considered in my life, that the fact that when you're diagnosed with a disease, like Parkinson's, that isolates you and your caregiver and their family, you know, all the rules change. And so what happens? You lose some of your social capital, you know? You can't go out as much as you used to go out. You can't, you know, you're just not interpreted in the same way. You're devalued. You have to fight to not be devalued and to pull people in and help you. And I think that's where, again, going back to this topic of grace, where grace is so important to live with this disease as the caregiver, as the person with Parkinson's. So seek out information. My daughter made some podcasts. I think you really find them interesting. Last year she wrote a little column about what to tell your friends as a 20-something who are coming to meet their parent for the first time. You know, and she would coach people up. Well, my dad might not respond the same way that you might expect, but he might be laughing inside. And it's just important to have those conversations and try to get that information out there as to what's important. I would argue that when you're diagnosed with Parkinson's, the rules change, the rules of engagement change, and a lot of what I like to talk about and a lot of what Davis and I have gone through over these past 17 years now that he's lived with Parkinson's, is that the rules have really changed. And I've had to be kind of the boss and kind of hard-nosed about a lot of things, and specifically about things around safety. We also have tried to be very gracious with each other in terms of the fact that sometimes you just get off to the wrong start. You know, we're running late again. I've got a halo up here that needs polishing, so I might as well polish that while I'm waiting, right? You know what I'm talking about. You're just like... Did you forget it was going to take you 7 minutes to get your shoes on, and it only takes me 30 seconds? You know, so it's like, well, I was just waiting on you. I'm like, oh, no. No. And I've learned that I do a lot better if I just get in the car to wait there rather than stormtrooping around the front hallway. But, you know, you have to find out what works for you. You know, once I'm sure that he doesn't actually need my help, and I've taken a few deep breaths, you know, I text my friends and say, we're late, but we're coming. So, you know, the rules change, the games change. Try as we might, we're still going to be frustrated. And that halo's only good for so much. My angel wings get a little tight now and then. But you know, we keep working on it, right? And I think that it's just something that we have to continue to work on because the person with Parkinson's didn't ask for it, right? If I could give you one tip, it would be to never let your person with Parkinson's go to the doctor without you. I think early in the game I thought, well, he can manage this. He's an adult. But when the person with Parkinson's goes to the doctor, quite often when they come back, you say, how did it go with the doctor? Fine. Did they tell you anything new? Yeah. But did you give them the list of all the things that are going on? Oh, the list. Right? And you're like, well, you know you're not going to see your doctor for another 6 months. Yeah, it's okay. It's not okay. So I really encourage people, go to the doctor. Don't take notes. Take out your smartphone and tape record the conversation. Make sure it's running. Don't miss it. Because the other thing is when you get back and the person with Parkinson's says to you, oh, that's not what my doctor said. You're like, wait a minute. That was at about minute 5. Oh, yep, you got proof right there. It's not just your notes. It's actually the doctor. Or maybe you misunderstood what the doctor said. But don't waste your time trying to take notes. Really tape record the conversation and listen to it again together so you make sure that you both have heard this together, okay? I think that's so important. If there's like one thing I would tell you to do. You've heard a lot today. You have informed yourself, to my last point here on this slide, that today you've heard a lot. A lot of people don't know that some of the behaviors associated with Parkinson's are an outcome of the medicines, not the disease. It's a combination. It actually is. If you took the medicines, you wouldn't have that outcome. It's the outcome of having Parkinson's and taking certain medicines can result in behaviors that are far from normal. You don't wait for your next doctor's appointment to find out if it's normal. You call and get on the phone with their PA or their nurse, whoever it is that can answer your questions, okay? Don't let it drag on because there's paranoia and impulse behavior that needs your attention. Because your number one job as a caregiver really is to create a safe environment. And impulsive behavior is rarely safe. And it is preventable in many cases. So a lot of people don't know, too, when you have the deep brain stimulation therapy, that there are some behaviors that occur, especially as in the adjustment period. And it's just so important for people to know that some of these behaviors are not normal and are modifiable. Okay. Again, another cartoon from Peter Dunlap Scholl. I don't know how many people are in a category where they've been thinking about disability or have applied for disability with Social Security or with your job, but it's very important to anticipate when you might need to do that. And one reason that you might want to do that, especially if you're in your 50s, is because it helps fast track you to Medicare and will greatly, in this really unknown climate for healthcare, will greatly reduce your costs. It's very important to think about it in advance because it's a couple-year process just to receive, because you're basically filing a major insurance claim just to get the disability, and then from there there's a waiting period to get Medicare. So again, inform yourself, educate yourself, and think ahead. There's probably many people in here already under Medicare, and but many of you may be well within the time period where you might want to consider that and know what your rights are. You have the right to apply for that. And they will probably turn you down the first time you apply. So you have to reapply. But you need to do that because you have a case. Parkinson's is a known disease that qualifies you for disability. So if that is the case, if it's impacted your job, think about it. Try to, take some time to really have this conversation. It's a tough one. So when we talk about the care team, a lot of people, I used to just give the talk trying to help people talk about who's on their care team. And I think that a lot of times, you might think, well, the care team, is me, right? I recently gave a talk at a big hospital outside of Boulder, and the lead doctor, they were giving the Doctor of the Year awards, and the lead doctor was a cardiologist, and he described himself as the #1 caregiver. And I have to say, with all due respect to the physicians, I had never thought of our physician as a caregiver. I had not thought of that as, that they really are the first line of caregiving. I always think that there's more of this kind of professional interface and that a caregiver is more personal. But you really need to think about that the medical professionals in your life are part of your care team, and you do need to be able to rely on them. And if they don't allow you access, you may need to change your doctor or consult with other doctors. On that topic, how many people in the room, because I'm curious, see a movement disorder specialist? Oh, a pretty good number. That's fantastic. How many are seeing a family doc for the Parkinson's? Just a couple. So I think, so everybody else in the middle is seeing a neurologist. Again, as Joanne Hamilton said earlier today, it's just so important for your doctors to be able to communicate one with the other. So if you don't have access to a movement disorder specialist, you've got to ask your neurologist to consult with one, or you need to take the time, and it may require a trip, to go and consult with one yourselves. And they're not going to be offended. Doctors are used to you getting other opinions, and you know you need help. But if you're only served by a family practice doc, you will be much better served in this complicated process by being with a doctor who has more in their skill set than just a family practice doc. So I don't want to take too much time on this, but I do think that you start small. I've noticed one of the things with our care team, my personal care team, is that the friends that we made after Davis was diagnosed with Parkinson's tend to be the ones who are most helpful. It's sort of an interesting dichotomy, because there's all these people that we've known for 30 years, but they know Davis in a whole other way. They don't know the Davis that might need some help. And I think my friends that I've met since his diagnosis, and of course you've been living with this for a long time now, are the ones who are more able and eager to help. You'll figure that out. You'll figure out who your friends are that can help you, but you need to start asking those friends in, and you need to let them know what you need. Could be something small, could be something big, could be transportation related, it could be just delivering muffins now and then. So some family members aren't helpful, some friends aren't helpful. You need to figure out who's helpful. You know, the physical therapist, very helpful. A lot of people want to know, well, what should my person be doing, and should I be nagging my person with Parkinson's? No, you shouldn't have to be nagging, but there needs to be some accountability. And so you may need professionals that will help you in that realm. You may need friends to give rides to exercise classes so that you're not always the one that has to do that, you know, or to the singing class or the voice lessons. But recruit those people. Don't try to do it all yourself, because you need time for yourself too. Okay, so what can you do now? You're doing a great thing right now. You're getting informed. Avoid isolation. That's a huge part of Parkinson's, is isolation. Isolation is worse for you than smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. It will kill you faster than anything else. So the number one thing that you have to do is keep getting out there. And a lot of times people ask me, well, my person with Parkinson's doesn't want to go out. And I'm like, well, but do they trust you? You know when it's good for them to go out, to go to a movie or to go to a kid's sporting event or something. Do they trust you? They need to trust you. And you need to help them to get out. Tim talked about contentment. I'm a big fan of seeking contentment in your life, and I think that's very important. But I'm also like a natural optimist, and I think that helps me too. And you know, you can train your brain to be more optimistic. So you as caregivers really need to maintain your optimism, and you need to really work on that, because it's easy to lose that. We practice a lot of humor at our house. Everybody knows that faith is an important part of your life, whether it's just faith in having a good day or faith in tomorrow, or faith in terms of going to church. It's important for you, and it's an important part of your team, really. So you do need to start building your team, and you need to just sort of have a bullseye target of what to focus on sometime. And I just say, you know what, focus on trying to be happy. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate everybody's attention, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.